Okay, good morning, everyone. Today we will be exploring a fascinating journey through our time. That is, we will be discussing one of the important topics in the Philippine Constitution, the national territory. Defining a nation borders isn't just a matter of geography. It's about sovereignty, identity, an assertion of our country's place in the global community. So, as we all know, the concept of national territory has been shaped by multiple forces. As what we have discussed in the Constitution, the national laws of our land, and different international agreements. In our discussion today, we will discuss the evolution of the national territory, the different laws and the international community that greatly influence how we view our national borders, particularly the significance of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea or the UNCLOS, how it established the maritime zones and the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration which reinforce our rights in the West Philippine Sea. So, understanding these different layers, historical, legal, and international, it will help us see how our national territory moving. It is not static, it evolves to meet the challenges of the times. It's not about just depending on ours, but also about fulfilling our duty to protect our people, our resources, and our place in the world. So today, uh, we will be dealing with the national territory. Let us proceed. So as we discussed in the first video, the different elements of the state. One is territory, the other one is population, the government, the sovereignty. Those were the four elements of the state. We have discussed already the sovereignty and the other concept. Then today we will be discussing the territory, which is important part or important element of the state. When we talk about national territory, we will look back to the provision as defined under the 1987 Constitution, particularly Article 1, which states that the national territory comprises the Philippine archipelago, with all the islands and waters embraced therein, and all other territories over which the Philippines has sovereignty or jurisdiction, consisting of terrestrial, fluvial, aerial domains, including territorial sea, the seabed, the subsoil, the insular shelves, and other submarine areas. In the inland waters, the waters around, between, and connecting the islands of the archipelago. Regarding the breadth and dimension, which form part the internal waters of the Philippines. So this is the national territory, which the Philippine sovereignty uh, enforces its sovereignty over the territory and its people. We will elaborate this one, the Philippine Archipelago, the archipelagic doctrine, and the different parts of that archipelago. So as discussed, there are territorial sovereignty and jurisdiction under our constitution and the different literatures that we have read and discussed. First, the territorial sovereignty. It signifies ownership and possession of a territory, which entitle the state to exercise its functions, authority, and jurisdiction over its territory. So that is the territorial sovereignty which we have the control. We have the sovereignty. The other one concept is the jurisdiction, which simply means the official legal power to make laws and legal judgments regarding peoples, properties, and events within the state territory. So we are familiar in criminal law, which we have territorial jurisdiction over this territory that we have. Now we can enforce the criminal law of our land over our territory. So when we talk about territory, which as an element, no, important element of the state, it needs to be defined and recognize its borders. No? So as we read the provision of the Constitution, it composes of terrestrial, the aerial, and the fluvial. So we will discuss first the terrestrial. So we have 300,000 square kilometers, the whole land of the streets from north to south. This is composed of 300,000, and it's also composed of 7,641 island and islets, including the mountains, the valleys within. That is the terrestrial or the land, part of the territory of the country. Next, the fluvial. The fluvial or the maritime also, as what we have read, it involves the inland waters. The waters around, between, and connecting the islands in it's what we call the inland waters. Here in the the inland waters, including the rivers, the creeks, and others, within the or what we call the EBC, around, between, and connecting islands or islets within uh, the waistline. Next is the territorial sea. The territorial sea, which we will further discuss later on, that is the 12 nautical miles from the baseline. Then after that, the contiguous sea, which is again from the baseline, is 24 nautical mile, or additional 12 nautical mile from the end of the territorial sea. After that, we have the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical mile from the baseline. When we talk about the baseline, it is the low water mark of a given territory. No, if this is the given lower water mark, you just measure 200 nautical miles. That is the exclusive economic zone, which in our constitution it says that the state shall protect the nation's marine wealth in archipelagic water, territorial sea, and exclusive economic zone. And it explicitly said that preserve its use and enjoyment exclusively to Filipino citizens. No? So, use and enjoyment term. The state is duty bound no, to protect the nation's marine wealth. This one, the pluvial. Also, the aerial, the aerial, which is the above the terrestrial and the fluvial domains. Now, this one, stretching above the territorial sea and the fluvial, which we have uh, sovereignty. So that is our terrestrial, fluvial, and aerial domain. Now let's go to the evolution of our national territory. So we are familiar already with what the former senior associate uh, justice Antonio Carpio discussed about the Murillo Velarde map, which is the oldest map, no? The 1734, which has the old map that will show to us the coverage of the Philippine territory at the time. So also, if we will look back at the history, prior to this, we have the Treaty of Paris, which ceded the Philippines from Spain to US, to US. Now, after the Treaty of Paris, we have the Treaty of Washington of 1900, which clearly delineate the boundaries at the south, part of Tawi-Tawi, the Sibuto, and the other one, uh, Cagayan de Tawi-Tawi, the Treaty of Washington, in 1900. Now, after that comes another treaty or convention between the US and the Great Britain, Great Britain in 1930. Here it clarifies the boundary, in the north, and then the part of the Borneo and the Philippines, which includes the Turtle Islands. It's one of my area when I was in Antawi-Tawi, the Mapun, and then the Turtle Islands. So that's why I think it's very near to Borneo because as what my friends there shared to us that they just ride bangkas to Borneo to buy some goods, and you can observe in their place that there are more products from Borneo and other countries rather than from our country itself, no? So that's why it's very near to the other, the border, Borneo and Malaysia. So here, as you can see, the provision, no? The provision of the Treaty of Washington, it says that uh, all islands, so any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago, is even at the time the Spaniards, no, the term is as Philippine archipelago, and also the lying outside of the lines, no, because as discussed by Justice Carpio, uh, there are glaring, now vague, and the previous in the Treaty of Paris. Now here in Treaty of Washington becomes clearer. No, those areas which they call it lying outside the lines. Uh, that is, includes the Cagayan de Tawi-Tawi and Sibutu, Tawi-Tawi, part also of Tawi-Tawi. To make concrete and clear presentation of the evolution, it's better, no, to discuss the different laws and international agreements, which help us to view the evolution of our national territory. So first, we look back at the concurring opinion of Justice Presbyterio Velasco Jr. in the case of Magalona versus Ermita, which detailed how the definition of national territory involved. It says, from the foregoing discussions on the deliberations of the provision on national territory, the following conclusion is abundantly evident. Philippine Archipelago of the 1987 Constitution is the same Philippine Archipelago referred to Article 1 of 1973 Constitution, which in turn corresponds to the territory defined and described in Article 1 of the 1935 Constitution. So we look back, 1973 Constitution and then 1935, it's the same. Huh? It reads, the Philippines comprises all the territories ceded to the U.S. by the Treaty of Paris concluded between the U.S. and Spain on the 10th day of December 1898. The limits of which are set forth in Article 3 of said treaty, together with the islands in the treaty concluded in Washington between the U.S. and Spain on November 1900, and the treaty concluded between the U.S. and Great Britain in 1930. So those the different treaty signed by the U.S. now, which we are under, we are the colony at the time, no? And then the Washington Treaty and the Treaty of Paris. The different national law from there on, the different treaties that uh, makes form or evolve the evolution of our archipelago. Now, we will look at the different laws which help us to expand the national territory of our land. First, the Republic Act 3046. This defined the baselines of Philippine archipelago in 1961. It also delineated our internal waters which include all bodies of water found within the baselines. The maritime regime of the Philippines comprises its internal waters and its territorial sea, or what we term all the waters beyond the outermost islands of the archipelago, but within the limits of the boundaries set forth in the aforementioned. Uh, Here, it defines the baseline and delineated the eternal waters. That is in 1960s. Now came the Republic Act 5446, which amended the archipelagic baselines to correct the typographical errors. More important, it declared that the drawing of archipelagic baseline is without prejudice to the country's sovereignty and dominion over the territory of Sabah in North Borneo. So we agreed that to have a new baseline demarcation or the drawing of archipelagic baseline, which will not prejudice the Sabah, no? the in North Borneo. Next, the Presidential Decree 1596, which declared the Kalayaan Island Group in the continental margin of the archipelago as part of the Philippine territory. So this is the Kalayaan Group of Islands that based on its history, indispensable need, and effective occupation and control established in accordance with international law. So there are, as we have learned in public international law, and acquisition of territory is either in occupation, is either in the effective occupation, and those controls established in accordance with international law. Next is the Republic Act 387, which expanded the Philippines jurisdiction beyond its territorial waters to its continental shelf. So, as we have demarcated before, the territorial waters, now it includes the continental shelf, the seabed below the territorial sea. It declared state ownership of all natural deposits, petroleum or natural gas in public and or private lands in the Philippines. So it expanded that the territorial scope, and then also the state ownership. Next, Proclamation number 370, which declared the Philippines jurisdiction and control over all maritime, mineral, and natural resources in its continental shelf. Okay, now its continental shelf. This was to encourage further exploration and exploitation of new sources of petroleum and other natural resources. Presidential Decree 1599 established the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, which was described as a recognized principle of international law. It provides the rights of the Philippines in its exclusive economic zone within 200 nautical miles beyond and from the baseline from which the territorial sea is measured. Later on, we'll draw that one. So in presidential, the same law is more expansive. It declares sovereign rights over the exclusive economic zone, the sovereign rights, which includes the seabed, subsoil, subjacent waters, and all the living and non-living resources found in it. You can look at the how the evolution of the territory. And Republic Act 9522, the Philippines amended archipelagic baseline, no, through this act. No. It designated Calayan Island Group and Bajo de Masinloc as the regime of islands, generating maritime zones. In Magalona, this court affirmed the constitutionality of Republic Act 9522 as compliance with its obligation under UNCLOS. No? As we have learned, if there is a rock in a sea, no, you can have uh, this is the rock, no, you can count 12 nautical miles as your territorial sea, no, as it's the territorial sea. That's why if you own rock along the ocean or the high seas, it will expand your territory because it will form part, no, of the 12 nautical miles as your territorial sea. Uh, so that's why if China is claiming, no, the West Philippine Sea, and then the different structures there, no, they can uh, eventually, no, claim the there will be an overlapping, no, of the territorial sea, also the contiguous sea, and then the exclusive economic zone. If this is the Philippines and this is China, no, if they will be successful in their claims, no, they can expand this one. The territorial sea, the contiguous, and then the exclusive economic zone. So there will be an overlapping of these maritime claims. Now here comes the UNCLOS, or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. UNCLOS, sometimes referred to as the Constitution of the Ocean. Under the UNCLOS, a state has the following maritime regimes: the territorial sea, the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, and the continental shelf. So the maritime zones of the Philippines, being an archipelagic state, proceed from its archipelagic baselines. Now we have the baselines. This is the low water mark, joining the outermost points of its outermost islands and drying reefs. This baseline generally conform to the archipelago's configuration. Let's take a look. So this is the maritime zone, the territorial sea. Territorial sea is the where the state sovereignty, no, exercises sovereignty. It's 12 nautical miles from the baseline. No? If this is the baseline, the low water mark, no, you will count 12 nautical miles. That is the territorial sea. Subject to the rights of all states of their ships' innocent passage. No? The only exception is what they call the innocent passage, or that which is not prejudicial to the peace, good order, or security of the coastal state. The right of innocent passage which other states can pass, no? But they have to inform the jurisdiction. Beyond the 12 nautical miles territorial sea is the contiguous zone. In the contiguous zone, the state may only exercise limited jurisdiction. Some for custom purposes and uh, other important. No, it's something called a buffer. No? Buffer beyond the territorial sea, the contiguous zone. Next, that is the exclusive economic zone. So beyond the contiguous zone, 200 nautical miles from the baseline, lies the exclusive economic zone. The state retains its sovereign rights uh, over the exploration, exploitation, conservation, and management. No? Sometimes we call it the EDU, exploration, development, and utilization of its natural resources, living or non-living, that may be found within seabed, subsoil, and the water subjacent to the seabed. No? Imagine that one. No? Above and the seabed or the superjacent to the seabed. So the continental shelf, a coastal state's continental shelf includes the seabed, the subsoil of the submarine areas that extend beyond its territorial sea throughout the natural prolongation of its land territory to the outer edge of the continental margin, meaning not exceeding 350 nautical miles from the baselines. Huh? So I will let you see drawing from the USGS. Now, this is the presentation of the maritime zones or the maritime regimes. If this is the baseline, this is the low water mark portion of the coastal state. This is the baseline. So you will count 12 nautical miles. That is the territorial sea. That is where our sovereignty can be apportioned. No? This is the uh, portion where our sovereignty exists. Next is the contiguous zone, which we have limited law enforcement zone, no? Because this is a contiguous zone. It's sometimes it is being used for customs, no? Uh, monitoring. So from the baseline, this is 24 nautical miles or 12 nautical miles from the territorial sea. Beyond the territorial sea and contiguous zone is the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles from the baseline. And below, no, below that, the seabed, that is what we call the continental shelf. The continental shelf, which do not exceed 350. So this is the extended continental shelf, the seabed, and this is the continental shelf. Uh. So beyond the 350 nautical miles, or 100 nautical miles beyond the 2,500-meter isobat, whichever is greater. After that, that is what we call the high seas. This is high seas already, and this is the deep seabed areas, which is owned by the international community. No? Sometimes we call it Ristolios, which owned or no one owned of that portion. So that is the maritime regime that we have, that we exercises our territorial sovereignty, and then the sovereign rights. No? The sovereign rights is one. Until the extended continental shelf or the continental shelf which we have sovereign rights over the natural resources. No? And the Constitution is instructive, no, that the state should protect, no, these natural resources as part of the public interest doctrine. Public interest doctrine, in which the government serves uh, as trustee of these natural resources for the benefits of its people. For the benefits of these people. These are the primary beneficiary. And it's the obligation of the state, no, the duty of the state to protect such natural resources for the benefits of the people. That is the public uh, interest doctrine. We will discuss it in the next video about the national economy and patrimony pertain to the public interest doctrine. Now, this is the Permanent Court of Arbitration in relation to the issue in West Philippine Sea. No? As for the Philippines' rights within its exclusive economic zone, this is the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Under 698, the convention is clear on the allocation of rights within the exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf with respect to non-living resources. Article 77 of the convention provides that the coastal state, which in this case is necessarily the Philippines, exercises over the continental shelf sovereign rights for the purpose of exploring and exploiting its natural resources. The convention goes on to make clear that the rights referred to are exclusive. Exclusive in the sense that if the coastal state does not explore the continental shelf or exploit its natural resources, no one may undertake these activities without the express consent of the coastal state. So we are provided with natural resources that it's for us, no, to exploit and utilize. It's for the public, for the people, the Filipino people. So these provisions are unequivocal and require no further interpretation. Within its continental shelf, only the Philippines or another state acting with its permission. If the Philippines will grant another state permission to exploit and utilize and develop the natural resources in the continental shelf, they can exploit the natural resources of the seabed. That is the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And they still expounded that one in 700. The same clarity is evident with respect to living resources and the provisions of the exclusive economic zone. Article 56 is clear in allocating to the coastal state, which again is necessarily the Philippines in the areas in question. So sovereign rights for the purpose of exploring and exploiting, conserving and managing the natural resources, whether living or non-living, of the waters superjacent to the seabed. And of the seabed, it is subsoil, and with regard to other activities for economic exploitation and exploration of the zone. The rights of other states in the exclusive economic zone are detailed in Article 58 and are limited to navigation and overflight and of the laying of submarine cables and pipelines on other internationally lawful uses of the seabed relating to these freedoms, the freedom of navigation and overflight. That is only. No? The rights of another state do not include restricting a coastal state from exploiting the living resources of its own exclusive economic zone. So that is our exclusive economic zone. No? Indeed, the very notion is incompatible with the concept of sovereign rights and the exclusive jurisdiction over fisheries that was central objective motivating the introduction of the exclusive economic zone concept. So that is the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So we can see that we are in the favorable situation in the eyes of the court, and it is for us not to assert and uh, execute the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration. So that is the national territory, and here are the references that can help you to widen your knowledge on this topic. Thank you for listening and for watching this lecture, and I hope that you will subscribe to this channel and to watch to the future upload or future video on the mineral resources or natural resources, national economy and patrimony, the three branches of government and other topics that form part of the Philippine Constitution. Thank you and good morning, everyone. God bless.